Hey everyone, welcome back. You know how those first few months with a newborn can feel like one giant question mark?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, we're tackling all those common worries new parents have. Think of this deep dive as your cheat sheet to those early days.
That's a great way to put it. I'm excited to jump in and share some insights that I've picked up over the years.
We're so glad to have your expertise. I know one question that I had as a new parent, and I hear this all the time from, friends and listeners. It's just, how do I know if my baby's eating enough? Especially if you're breastfeeding, you can't see exactly what they're getting.
Oh, absolutely. That's the number one question I get as well. It's such a huge worry for new parents. But here's the thing. Breast milk, it's like this perfectly designed nutritional powerhouse.
It really is.
It's usually more than enough for your baby's needs.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard, but try not to get too caught up in those ounces or how long they're feeding for.
Right.
Instead, focus on your baby's growth.
Okay, yeah.
Are they gaining weight steadily?
That makes sense.
Having plenty of wet and dirty diapers?
Oh, yeah, those diaper changes. Definitely not the most glamorous part of parenthood.
No, but they tell you a lot. Those are much better indicators than staring at the clock or, measuring every last drop.
Yeah, and it's reassuring to know that your pediatrician is there to help you track all of that.
Exactly. Regular checkups are like your safety net, making sure everything's on track.
It's like having a co-pilot on this wild ride. But even with all the reassurance in the world, babies are going to cry, right?
Oh, for sure.
And I think it's easy for new parents to go into panic mode.
Yeah.
To think like, oh my gosh, the baby's crying, they must be starving.
Right. And while hunger can definitely be a trigger, crying is their primary way of communicating. It's not always a feed me alarm.
More like a little human alarm system.
Exactly. It could be, I'm tired, I need a diaper change, I just want to be, all sorts of things.
This outfit's uncomfortable, I'm bored.
Exactly. And you'll start to pick up on their cues, like their little cries.
Become a baby whisperer. Right?
You got it. You'll become a detective, You'll learn those subtle differences. And then there's that cry.
Oh no, we talk about the cry?
The one that sends shivers down your spine. That's colic.
It's like nothing else. As a new parent, you're like, okay, what is this? What do I do?
It's rough. It's that intense, often inconsolable crying.
For hours sometimes.
Yes. And it often rears its ugly head in the evenings, just when you thought, oh, maybe I'm going to get a little break.
Of course. So what can we do? What does the latest research tell us about soothing those colicky cries? Because every new parent needs a collar-busting toolkit.
Totally agree. Now, while the exact cause of colic is still a bit of a mystery, there are things we can do to help.
Okay.
If you're breastfeeding, making sure your baby's latching correctly is huge. You want them to take in both the nipple and a good portion of the areola. This helps prevent them from swallowing air, which can lead to gas and discomfort.
Oh, we're talking proper latch techniques.
Exactly. That's your foundation. And here's a little tip. Avoid stroking your baby's cheek while they're feeding.
Really? Why is that? Because it just seems natural to soothe them while they're eating.
Right, but it triggers that rooting reflex, which makes them want to turn their head, which can mess with their latch. And again, you're back to air swallowing, more gas, more discomfort.
Okay, so we're ditching the cheek strokes. What else can we add to our colic-soothing arsenal?
Upright positioning after meals. Keeping that baby upright for about 20 minutes after they eat helps that milk settle and prevents gas from getting trapped.
Like a little burping break.
Exactly. Speaking of which...
Please tell me this is about those, shall we say, colorful diapers that breastfed babies are known for.
You read my mind. Don't be alarmed by those mustard-colored semi-liquid stools. That's totally normal for breastfed babies.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, it's a little surprising when you see it for the first time.
Right.
You're like, where did all that come from?
Exactly. But hey, at least now you're prepared.
Prepared for anything. So we've tackled feeding. We've demystified those colicky cries. What other hurdles await unsuspecting new parents?
Well, as your little one starts to, settle into a routine, and hopefully their tummy troubles start to ease.
Fingers crossed.
It's time to shift gears and talk safety.
Because once those little ones start moving, it's a whole new ballgame.
Absolutely. We'll dive into all that after the break.
Because let's face it, those little ones, they don't understand danger yet.
Not one bit.
So baby-proofing, it's not about being paranoid, it's about being prepared.
Exactly. It's all about setting them up for success, and minimizing those, oh my gosh, how do they get into that moments.
Right. It's like they have a sixth sense for finding trouble sometimes. So where do we even begin?
Well, let's talk about high surfaces first.
Okay.
Changing tables, beds, sofas. Even if your little one isn't quite mobile yet, those rolls and wiggles can happen before you know it.
Oh, yeah, they're quick. You turn your back for a second.
Exactly. So never, and I mean never, leave your baby unattended on a high surface.
Got it. High surfaces, constant supervision. What else?
It's also easy to let our guard down when we're holding our babies.
Oh, for sure.
Like you're trying to soothe them, maybe you're in a rocking chair, but those can actually be a little risky, especially if you're breastfeeding.
Oh, I can see how that could go wrong very quickly.
Yeah, spilled milk, tears all around, not fun. And speaking of slippery situations, bath time.
Oh, yes, bath time. Those tiny tubs are adorable. But I feel like I'm always holding my breath.
It's definitely nerve-wracking at first. My best advice is, for newborns, stick with sponge baths or very shallow baths until they have better head and neck control.
Makes sense. And then as they get bigger, you can gradually transition to those, those little tubs.
Exactly. No need to rush it. Safety first, always.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about creating a safe sleep environment, we have to talk about co-sleeping.
It's one of those topics that every new parent has an opinion on.
Oh, absolutely. It's a big one. And I know it's tempting, especially when you're exhausted and you just crave that closeness.
Oh, I totally get it.
But the research is crystal clear on this one. Co-sleeping significantly increases the risk of SIDs.
So even if you're a super light sleeper, it's still not worth the risk.
Not worth gambling with your baby's safety. The risks of suffocation, overheating, they're just too high.
So separate sleep spaces, even if it's just a bassinet right next to your bed.
Exactly. Close proximity, but in the safest way possible.
Okay, so we've covered some indoor safety basics. What about when you're venturing out into the world with a newborn?
Yeah.
Sun safety. How much is too much for those little ones?
Yeah. It's different than with adults, that's for sure. We want them to get that vitamin D, but their skin is so sensitive.
So how do we find that balance?
Gradual exposure is key. When you first start taking your baby out in the sun, begin with just 1 minute of direct exposure.
Wait, really? Just 1 minute? That seems short.
It does, right?
Like barely enough time to get the stroller out the door.
I know. But trust me on this one. Their skin is incredibly sensitive to those UV rays.
Okay, so start slow.
Exactly. After that initial minute, you can gradually add a minute each day, working your way up to about 10 minutes of daily sun exposure.
And I'm guessing timing is everything, right?
You got it. Early morning is best, between 8 and 9 a.m., when the sun's rays are less intense.
Makes sense. Avoid that midday sun. What about their eyes? Do we need to get those tiny sunglasses on them?
Those are cute, aren't they? But a simple soft cloth draped over their eyes works just as well.
Oh, that's good to know. Much easier than trying to wrangle sunglasses onto a squirmy baby. So, gradual exposure, early morning timing, and protecting those precious eyes. Anything else to add to our sun safety checklist?
Just one more thing. Those little ones, they're practically germ magnets.
It's true. Everything goes straight into their mouths.
Exactly. And those first few months are crucial for building up their immune systems. So we want to be extra cautious.
So are we talking about becoming hermits for those first few months? No play dates, no trips to the grocery store?
It doesn't have to be that extreme.
Okay, good.
It's more about being mindful. Avoiding those crowded, enclosed spaces where germs love to hang out. If you can skip the crowded mall trip or postpone that indoor play date, those are smart choices.
It's about being selective, not secluded.
Exactly. And of course, good old-fashioned hand washing is still your best defense.
Hey, forget about hand washing.
Never underestimate the power of soap and water.
So we've talked feeding, we've talked safety, we've talked dodging those germ grenades. But what about those times when, something just seems off? How can new parents tell when it's time to call the pediatrician? Because I imagine that can be scary.
It really can. You don't want to be the parent who's, running to the doctor for every little sniffle.
Right.
But you also don't want to miss any red flags.
Exactly. So what should we be looking out for? What are those signs that it's time to pick up the phone and call for backup?
Well, first and foremost, pay close attention to your baby's skin color. If you notice a bluish tinge, especially around their lips or fingertips, that's a sign of potential breathing difficulties. And that warrants a call to the doctor right away.
Definitely not messing around when it comes to breathing. What else?
Jaundice. Now, it's normal for newborns to have a little bit of a yellowish tint to their skin in the first few days after birth.
Right.
But if you notice it appearing after day 3, or it seems to be getting worse, or it's spreading to other parts of their body,
Okay.
give your pediatrician a call.
Got it. So skin color, we're looking out for bluish, not good, yellowish and worsening, also not good. What about those, bodily functions? Any red flags to watch out for in that department?
Definitely. Frequent vomiting, especially if it's forceful, or the vomit looks like yellowish bile. That's a big one.
Noted.
And of course, any difficulty breathing, persistent coughing, changes in their usual breathing patterns, those should always be checked out.
Those tiny lungs, you don't want to take any chances with that.
Absolutely not. And last but not least, pay attention to your baby's feeding habits. If they suddenly refuse to nurse, or they seem disinterested in feeding,
Right.
that's a sign that something might be up.
It's amazing to me how these tiny humans who can't even talk yet can communicate so much through those subtle changes.
I know, it's incredible. They really do find ways to tell us what they need, and sometimes it's just a little change in their usual behavior that can be a clue.
It sounds like the overarching message here is trust your gut.
100%.
You know your baby best.
You do.
And if something feels off, it probably is.
Don't hesitate to reach out to your pediatrician. No question is too small. They'd much rather you call with a question than wait until it becomes a bigger problem.
Because knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
And feeling empowered as a new parent, that's priceless.
Couldn't agree more. And sometimes those instincts are telling you to take a beat and just really observe your little one.
Oh, absolutely. Trust that inner voice, that parental radar.
Exactly. You've got this. You're doing great.
Well, that's reassuring to hear because I think every new parent needs that reminder sometimes. But, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We really have.
From those early feeding worries
Yeah.
to, deciphering those mysterious baby cries to creating that safe haven for your little one. But you're right. Even with all this info, it's really just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it?
It is. Parenthood is a journey, not a destination, right?
So true. And as your little one grows and changes, so will your questions, right? But that's the beauty of it. It's all part of the adventure. And I think the biggest takeaway for our listeners today is you've got this. Trust your instincts. Lean on your support system. And don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
I love that. And you know what? Cherish these moments, even the messy ones.
Oh, absolutely. Even the sleep-deprived ones.
Because they really do go by in a flash.
Way too fast. Well, this has been such an insightful conversation, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today.
It's flown by.
I know, right? To our amazing listeners, keep those questions coming because we are here to dive deep with you every step of the way. Until next time, happy parenting, everyone.